All right, Anthony, welcome back to Mea Culpa. It's been a while, my friend. Welcome back to stateside. I got to ask you, because while you were away for a couple of days, obviously there's so much going on in this country. And I want to just start by getting your take on Jeffrey Goldberg of The Atlantic. So Goldberg reported that he was inadvertently included in a Signal group chat where senior officials of this administration, the Trump administration, including Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth and others, they discussed sensitive military operations. Now, Hegseth goes on and he shared in that communication detailed attack plans against Yemen's Houthis, including precise timings of the military actions. I want to ask you this. How does such a lapse reflect on the current administration's operational security protocols?
All right. Well, first of all, it's great to be back, and there's a lot to talk about. So let's go over a couple of things, because you know these people, I know these people. So let's talk about what they're trying to say happened, and then let's talk about what really happened. It's almost like you need a decoder ring. Like, remember when we were kids, you eating the cereal.
When did Twin Powers activate?
Right. You're trying to get to the Trump decoder ring. So let me make 4 points, and then you respond to them. Okay. Point number one: whose initials are JG? Because obviously Mike Walsh was trying to include somebody called JG. Is it a member of Congress? Is it another person in the National Security Network? He made a mistake and hit Jeff Goldberg as opposed to whoever the JG was. Point number two: the fact that they're using... You
want me to take them one by one?
Okay,
because
yeah,
I have an interesting theory on why JG went there.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I think they were rushing to get this Signal chat started, and instead of hitting JD for JD Vance, he ended up hitting JG instead.
Okay, but he also got JD Vance on there, though, right?
Yes.
So he hit it twice then? He must have just forgot to erase the JG.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense, okay? And that's a really good observation. If you don't mind, I'm probably going to use that in my public speaking, because I think that's a good...
So long as, by the way, you turn around and you trademark it and credit it to your friend.
I'm going to give you a footnote like I did when I was writing like a law review article, okay? All right, so that's number one, okay? Point number two is they all know better. They've all had that briefing. You sit in the briefing and they tell you what you can do, what you can't. Take the phone, put it in a skiff. Take the watch, if it's an iWatch or a Fitbit, put it in the skiff. So they know better. So there's almost like a cavalierness now where Donald Trump is in charge. We control the apparatus of investigation. We control the apparatus of the FBI. We're locked in with the Congress, and they're all part of Donald Trump's cult, and so they're never going to come after us. So we can sort of do whatever we want, okay? And so that's why they're on Signal. It's a fast, expeditious way to communicate with each other. They don't have to get into the skiff and do the more formal things. And this is the stuff they criticize Secretary Clinton for. They're doing it themselves, so there's hypocrisy there. Point number three: they are, in my opinion, okay, they are reckless, and they have been compromised. Steve Witkoff, who's on the chat, and you and I know Steve forever,
over 23 years.
So he's in Russia. The Russians
in the Kremlin.
Right. So they now get the Signal intelligence. And this would be like us with the Enigma code in World War II. We let attacks happen, so we didn't want people to know that we had the code, right? We were protecting ourselves in some ways, but we were letting other things go, so the Germans weren't given the heads up. So the Russians have now compromised us, and any adversary to the United States probably has some compromising things on the U.S. apparatus. Last point. There's a Senator Wicker. He's from Oklahoma. He is the senior chair of the Senate Armed Services Committee.
Yep.
In any other world, that person, Republican or Democrat, would call for an investigation. Some heads would roll due to the seriousness of this, but I predict no heads will roll, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not he would call for that investigation. So you're in the bizarro land of Trump world, a world you know well, a world I know well, And this is a world where this is be like Archie Bunker without Michael Stivic. Michael Stivic was there to keep Archie inside the rails, right? This is Donald Trump without Jim Mattis. This is Donald Trump without, again, you could like or dislike these people. Mike Pompeo followed the rules. Jim Mattis followed the rules. General Kelly followed the rules. These guys have said, hey, we don't have to follow any rules. And then there's a naivete of amateurishness, which leads to great arrogance. You guys, everybody was stupid before we arrived. We are smart. It's like Elon and Trump are the smartest people in the world. They're smarter than George Washington, smarter than Lincoln, smarter than everybody prior to their arrival. Stupid. They're smart. Everyone else is stupid. The results of which no rules apply to us. But you know this and I know this, that we have ground out these processes over 250 years. And we've layered these processes. When Trump was told by the State Department, don't go to the North Korean dictator, he's not going to give you anything. He's certainly not going to disavow his nukes. You think he's going to. I'm telling you, he's not. The best thing we can do with him is this sort of strategic ambivalence that we've created over 65 or so years. Trump didn't listen, went there. He gave huge propaganda films to the North Korean dictator. Nothing came out of it. Trump and Witkoff are now praising Vladimir Putin. I guess Putin prayed for Trump when he was shot at, and he developed a portrait of him, which is better than the Jared Polis portrait where he looks like Biff from Back to the Future. Okay, and so they're like in bed now with Putin, and Putin is the crocodile that's going to eat them. And he said, "Well, I've been a crocodile my whole life. Of course, I'm going to eat the two of you." And then the last thing, and I will shut up, and I do appreciate you bringing me on, is what is it? What is it with Putin? You're probably closer to it to me in terms of the history. Does he own them somehow? Are they running him like an asset? Does he just like strong people? Does he just like strong people? So he's in love with strong people? Okay, that's it.
There is no compromise. There is no P-tape.
Yeah. I believe that.
You may remember going back a bunch of years ago before my life got turned upside down. We were sitting in my office at the Trump Organization, and I actually received a phone call. You were in my office from a buddy of mine who has very strong connections in Russia. And somebody had reached out to him and said, hey, I think we found the P-tape. I said, oh, yeah? I said, do me a favor. If, in fact, they really have it, ask them for 3 seconds. Just show me a video, 3 seconds of Trump inside of a room that I can validate is a hotel room in Moscow, and I'll pay you whatever you want for that tape. And of course, nothing ever came out of it because it doesn't exist.
This is what I love. This is what I love about you. Okay, so the truth is the truth, which is why your tagline is nothing but the truth. And what I love about you is if it doesn't exist, it doesn't exist. Stop making it up.
Correct.
You remember the campaign. We were not. We were barely colluding with ourselves, Michael. How the hell were we going to collude with the Russians? We're not colluding with the Russians. Did they help him? Maybe they did. Maybe they didn't. They were creating disinformation everywhere,
which they're doing right now too.
Right. So, but the issue now is one of hope, and I'm going to explain to you why it's one of hope. Trump can't fire these people, and let me explain to you why, and I don't want to get your reaction. They have passed the Trump loyalty test. Mike Walsh, whatever he voted with Trump on the J6 situation. He voted against the impeachment after J6. They've passed the Trump loyalty test. Rubio sort of really hasn't, but they have that lackey with Rubio, like a court stenographer following Rubio around to make sure that he sings from the MAGA choir page. Mm-hmm. But the rest of these people are in the tank for Trump, Lutnick, etc. So he can't fire Walsh because there's a very thin group of people, Michael, that are going to do that. Okay, there's not, Mattis is not going to do that. McMaster didn't do that. Who's going to be his next national security advisor?
Let me.
Am I wrong on that? Or do you think I'm right about that?
No, I think you're wrong. Let me take a contrarian position, something that you know as well. Let me start by saying the two of us might have been specifically myself, as top 5. You're certainly top 10 of the most loyal people that existed in Trump's life going back in 2016. You're incredibly loyal.
Mm-hmm.
Me, I don't even have to discuss it. Everybody already knows.
I backed him up many times,
Sure. I mean, I was probably the most loyal to him, even more so than his own kids during that time. He doesn't care about anyone or anything other than himself. And what he cares about right now is the negative press and how stupid this administration looks. Somebody's ass has to be fired. I do believe it will be Mike Walls. I think he is the first one that will ultimately go. I don't think Lutnick has a long life expectancy there either, because of some of the stupid shit that he's been saying. And, I know Lutnick for 25 years. I guarantee you he's another one that will ultimately go. And he's going to go simply because Social Security is a real issue, and the insensitive comments that he made are being picked up by the media and not being forgotten. And that if there's one thing that Trump has a hard time dealing with, is turning on the television and seeing somebody else, whether it's positive or negative. He sees that person, it irritates him, and that person will ultimately get shit canned.
Okay, so let me test some more things on you, okay? Because this is great for me, if you don't mind, because
I know you're going to use it in your top-rated podcast too. I did, of course, want to turn around and say, I heard that Senator Roger Wicker, by the way, has called for an inspector general investigation into the use of Signal by national security officials. I thought he had said that at a hearing, stating that. I think he claimed that. Yeah, but I think he claimed that the breach, and I think the quote was something like, raises serious concerns about the handling of classified information. Now, I'm with you on this. I don't think it's going to be a meaningful investigation.
No teeth. There'll be no teeth to it.
Right. And I don't think it's going to really change how sensitive information amongst this group of incompetents are going to handle things. But nevertheless, he did turn around and acknowledge that an investigation is desperately needed.
You see, if I could offer, I know Howard super well, as you do, and from New York, et cetera, but he's not going to listen to me, certainly not going to listen to you. But if I could offer Howard some advice, I would say, calm down. You got this ridiculous overbite. You're trying to talk to Trump through the air. He doesn't like that. He doesn't like that. I know he doesn't like that. Calm down. Get off the air. Take a Stephen Mnuchin approach to your job. Do the job without any drama. Calm down. But he's out there beating a drum, and he's got this, he's brimming with overconfidence and brimming with arrogance, and it's not coming across well. And so what's happening is the media is coming at him, and they're going to try to harpoon him like he's Moby Dick. Am I wrong about that?
You're 100% correct. If there's one thing that Trump hates, is when somebody tries to grandstand, which takes away even a second of airtime that should be, no matter how many times Howard is going to say Trump is the smartest, he's the best looking, he's the greatest president in the history of this country, maybe even more so than George Washington. There comes a point in time, and you know this very, very well, there comes a point in time that he's had enough. And when the comments that you are making are comments that supersede when Trump says something, he's getting out ahead of Trump. That is an absolute fucking no-no. And that is 100% the cause for an excommunication from this Trump cult.
Right. And so Vance has also come across the line. He went on Rogan. Trump didn't like that. He then went on that Sunday morning show with Margaret Brennan, and he said, we're not going to pardon the violent J6ers. And so Trump said, fuck that. I'm now going to embarrass you, and I'm going to pardon all the violent J6ers. And he must have gotten those talking points from somebody. But back to Walsh. Who replaces Walsh then? If he's going to get fired.
There's so many, Anthony, members of the GOP There's so many of them that have signed this loyalty pledge to him. They have ignored the Constitution. They have ignored the rule of law. They are following in Trump's commentary, which is we can do whatever we want. We control the White House. We control the Senate. We control the Congress. And we're even, as far as we're concerned, controlling the Supreme Court. We will do and say what we want. There are a dozen people like the Tulsi Gabbards, the Kash Patels, that he could easily call upon to take this position. Because, by the way, you don't need, Anthony, to have any experience whatsoever in order for Trump to offer you this job. I mean, look, here's another guy who you know. I know him also over 2 decades. John Phelan was announced that he is now the Secretary of the Navy. John Phelan has no military experience at all. I don't even think, like, I was part of the Boy Scouts for 3 days when I was like 8 years old, 9 years old. I don't think Phelan was even part of the Boy Scouts. He has, by the way, I don't think he's even a fan of boats. I know he's a fan of skiing, but I don't think he's even a fan of boats. Meanwhile, he's the Secretary of the Navy. This is a guy who ran Michael Dell's money. And I know John very well. John is brilliant, and he's also a quick study. But you really want somebody to be a quick study, to be the Secretary of the Navy? So you don't need somebody with experience in order to take over walls as national security. All you need is somebody who's a loyalist. That's what this group, that's what they run upon. It's not about competence. Okay. It's about fealty.
All right. So what's going to happen, Michael?
I think, like what happened in the first administration, there's going to be a massive turning of individuals, because even though that they are loyal, I do believe that Trump is just Trump, and he's never going to change. And nobody expects him to change. But there is going to be, somebody's head has to roll on this one. And again, I do believe that it's going to be Mike Walls. There's no doubt. It can't be Pete Hegseth. Not yet. Not yet. Because that position, as you just said, would be too difficult to replace. And it's just a miracle that Hegseth got, with all of his foibles. It's amazing that he was confirmed. But then again, as you correctly put it at the beginning, they're controlling everything right now. That's why, by the way, that these midterms in, coming up like April 1st are so important. The 2 in Florida. And then I think there's one in September in, Wisconsin and Nevada or something like that. You know, Democrats take that. It's a change of power in Congress.
Okay. Elon Musk, how long does he last?
So Elon is an interesting scenario, and I'm glad that this is Anthony Scaramucci's Mea Culpa podcast. You know, I mean, you want me on your podcast, just invite me. But, how long does Elon? I will answer your questions for you.
I'll answer your questions too. I'm asking.
I see you're taking copious notes. Clearly.
I am. I'm writing the shit down. I have another question for you. Are they going to name Greenland Orange Land? I'm asking a question.
I mean, these are brilliant questions.
All right, go ahead.
Elon Musk is also one who does not have significant longevity. Now, right now, you know this as well as anybody who knows Donald. It's all about Donald. And it has to always be about him. He is using Elon Musk right now. And there will come a point in time when that use has run out. Because Donald doesn't need Elon's money anymore. In fact, if Donald wants, he can take Elon's money. He could wipe Elon out tomorrow and do to him what his administration, in the first administration, did to me. They could lock his ass up. And everybody said, come on, stop it. It's not true. It most certainly is. You know the old expression, Anthony, you could indict a ham sandwich? He could easily, Trump under this administration, can turn around and put somebody on, like a Tulsi Gabbard or a Kash Patel. And they would turn around and say, he stole hundreds of billions of dollars from the American people with that $7,500 electric vehicle rebate that he paid somebody off. They'll make up all sorts of shit that you can't prove or disprove. He will use one of the courts that they have relationships with the judge, like what was happening in Florida with Judge Eileen Cannon, and they will ultimately hold Elon criminally liable. They will freeze his bank accounts, make him pay back $300-400 billion and wipe his ass apart. You see, Trump has zero loyalty to anybody else. Let me give you one of the best examples that's out there. Think about Mike Lindell, the My Pillow moron, right? This is a guy who had a horrible drug problem, who overcame a significant heavy drug problem and built up this pillow company where I think his net worth was somewhere in the ballpark of over $500 million. Just the other day, they're auctioning off a series of his pillow manufacturing equipment in order to pay expenses and obligations, liabilities. Where is Trump on any of this? Where is Elon Musk or any of the other mega billionaires that would write a check on the spot simply because Trump told them to? Where are any of them? And the answer is they're nowhere. Why? Because Trump has no use for this guy anymore. This, remember, was the idiot that was shelling out hundreds of thousands at a clip, millions of dollars in order to stay in Trump's orbit. For what? For a fucking Mar-a-Lago burger? Right? For a free diet fucking Coke? He lost everything. And I'm telling you, Elon Musk is no different. And that's why you see folks like Bezos and Zuckerberg, they're not acting like Musk. They're just acting in a way to try to save themselves and their billions. That's what it's all about. But if I may just continue and ask you a question here, right? So you have Trump.
I do miss you, you bastard. I do miss you a tiny bit.
I miss you too, my brother.
Go ahead.
So Trump dismisses the accidental inclusion of Goldberg in that Signal chat as a glitch. By the way, he claims that it wasn't a chat, that it was a phone call, and that Goldberg got so bored by the conversation, he hung up off the line. It goes to show you that the people, the enablers that are around him, either aren't providing him with any of the information, or he's just not even listening. But one way or the other, he doesn't even understand what the Signal app does and what it's all about. But he also emphasized that it was an isolated occurrence within this administration. I want to ask you your thoughts on Trump's characterization, or should I say mischaracterization, of this significant security breach.
All right, well, let's go back to something that you and I both know, because I used to fly around with him. You did as well, 2016. Why are you saying that? It's not true. Oh, no, come on. If I say it enough, people will believe it. Well, why are you saying that? It's not true. The number 85 was a really good number. Why'd you say 96? 96 sounds better than 85. And so he's gotten, see, you're laughing a little because you remember it, and we all used to laugh about it. Honestly, I used to laugh about it. But he does that because he gets away with it, and he knows he can get away with it. So he can be in the cabinet room and say bad things about Goldberg. He could say good things about his team. He could say that it was a boring thing. He could say it doesn't really matter. Then he waits for his state television anchors to come to his defense at night, and he knows it's going to blow over. And so that's what he'll do, and he'll triple down on it the very next day. And then come on, Michael, you know, Zelensky's a dictator. 5 days later, did I say that? I don't remember. Did I say that? You know, with the frog face. You know, I mean, that's what he does. So you know that, and I know that, but see, you're laughing because you remember all this shit, right? and so what I'm getting at, though, is underneath all of that, like if it were Trump by himself, I'd be like, all right, this is crazy. You know, Mark Burnett created a monster. He won the presidency again. 3 years and 10 months, this will be over. and it is crazy, and it's a lot of agita. Very bad for the country, really good for Mea Culpa, really good for the podcast business, really good for the rest of Politics US, my podcast, right? But really bad for the country. But what I'm worried about is there's a sinister level of people that are now working with Trump. They're organized. I'm worried about the authors of Project 2025. I'm worried about one executive order after the next that's delayering the branches of government and strengthening the executive branch. I'm worried about the law firm stuff. I mean, he's going after law firms, and he's saying your employees, your lawyers will be banned from federal buildings. So if you have a federal case, you have a civil litigation that's going to be heard in a federal court building, your litigator can't enter the building. And that stuff is an attack on the citizens. And when a government attacks the citizens, I can point to so many different times in history where that is a really bad road to go down. So for me, Trump on his own, happy moron, disorganized, really just wants attention, make $800 million off his meme coin, get the camera in front of him. You're right. The airtime is his oxygen. If you're speaking, I told a very senior government official from another country, I said, get in the Oval Office, keep your mouth shut. If you're speaking, pretend you have a plastic bag over Trump's head and you're suffocating him. Because when you're speaking, he's not speaking. That means he's not breathing. And he can't wait for you to get done speaking so he can speak. So just let him speak and then get the hell out of there. Yeah. And I'm right about all this stuff. So what have I missed? What have I missed?
You haven't. And you're right. Project 2025 is a manifesto on the destruction of our American democratic republic. There's no doubt about that. And they are following it. Speaking about executive orders, I don't know if you heard about this one. They're actually contemplating on now compensating the January 6th insurrectionists for the damages that they sustained because they lost business opportunities and money while they were incarcerated. I mean, if that doesn't slap into the face of police officers and first responders across this country, if it doesn't slap into the face of even, forgetting about the independent voters, Republican voters who are not MAGA, I don't know what is. It is such an affront to our democratic principles. It is beyond. And then, of course, you have another executive order, which is being discussed with MAGA Mike Johnson about dismantling the federal courts altogether. That, my friend, is something that is written about not in one, but in two different chapters in Project 2025, that 922-page manifesto. There's two full on how to rewrite the Constitution to strip, and everybody has heard me say this 100 times, but I'm going to say it again. He himself said he intends to rewrite the Constitution. And of course, that's metaphorically speaking. He's not going to take his magic Sharpie, right, and rewrite a Constitution. He doesn't have the patience to do it, or, in all fairness, the intelligence. So what is he talking about metaphorically? To strip the legislative branch and the judiciary of their co-equal power conferred under the Constitution, and to grant and confer all power to the executive branch, namely himself. So therefore, he becomes the judge, the jury, and the executioner all in one.
Okay. I mean, I again, very well said. Could not do it on his own. Couldn't do it with Kelly and Mattis and McMaster or even Reince Priebus. Can do it with the clown car that he brought into the White House with him. He can definitely do it with this group of people. But I guess, so what does that mean, Michael? And the Democrats are like 6 different parties. They're disorganized, splintered into 6 different parties.
Thumbs up their ass, the whole 9 yards.
The MAGA has taken over the Republican Party, so there's no Republican opposition and there's no Democratic opposition. They can't even get along with each other, so they're going after each other. So that the best thing Trump has going for him is the disarray of the Democrats, or they're just going to let him do this without any
you
rebuttal?
can say whatever you want, but I was watching CNN the other day, and Harry Enton came on, and he's the numbers guy, and he turned around and he showed, despite all of this chaos, despite all of this tsuris that's going on right now, Social Security, Lutnick's stupid comment, you got Pete Hegseth calling, where they're calling for his resignation because of the Signal chat. Mike Walls, again, also because of the Signal chat. You have the attacks on the veteran administration and so on. And we can just go, I could spend the next 30 minutes talking about all the boondoggles that have come out of so far this just under 100 days or so, since Trump took office. His numbers, his favorability numbers today is higher than it was when he became president. Anthony, explain that shit to me.
So I can actually. I mean, I have a theory and I want to test it on you. I think he is the greatest culture warrior of our time.
I agree.
I think he is the apotheosis of everything he assimilated from Fox News. He is a triggerer. He knows how to trigger liberals like nobody I've ever seen. The AI of Gaza, whatever it might be, the different
the video of the Venezuelans taken to El Salvador.
Yeah. Anything that he can do to trigger a liberal, he will do. If Scavino shows him something, this will trigger liberals, boom, it's up on the web or it's coming out of his mouth. So he is the Napoleon. He is the Napoleon of culture warring. And the American people have had enough of woke. The American people have had enough of the DEI, although I actually think Waltz and Hegseth are DEI in some ways, okay, because they're now favoring dumb white males. And I think the people are upset. I think they've had enough, and they want Trump's brushback of these people. They want to return to Hollywood comedy. They want their sons. Michael, white men aged 18 to 35 have a 30% higher incidence rate of suicide than any other group. There's been a vacuum of advocacy for white men. They can't get into Harvard. They can't get into the law firm. They can't get into certain investment banks. And I think it's having a perverse effect that's aiding Donald Trump. And so my question to you is, if he's Napoleon, who's Wellington? Where is the Wellington that's going to beat him and finish him off?
Where is it? Part of like the question that I was just raising with you. While all of this stuff should grate upon the nerve of every American, Republican, Democrat, Independent, it's not. Mm-hmm. It's not. And I have said, and I have been criticized by even, people who follow me, whether it's on my Substack or here on Mea Culpa, my YouTube channel. It makes no difference. People have criticized me. Why do you say that Donald Trump is the greatest marketer, the greatest brand marketer in the history of this world? Because he is. Because he is. This is a guy who can turn around and you could take a leaked Signal chat that details attack plans against the Houthis, that raises operational concerns, security concerns for our military, right? And somehow or another, he spins it into a way that this is really more an attack upon him and his White House by the liberals, by the Dems, who just want to diminish and undermine his administration's accomplishments that they have been, successful in. He'll then go on television and tell you, looking you right in the face, and I'm going to do the voice for you, Anthony, because I know you miss his voice. This episode of Mea Culpa is brought to you by Graza, my new favorite olive oil. It's fresh, it's never blended, and it comes from a single type of olive, the Picual, straight out of Jaén, Spain, where over half of the world's olive oil is produced. So why Graza? Single origin goodness, that's why. Only one olive from one region. No mysterious blends. That means a traceable, a fresher product without mixing in any low grade or unknown oils. It's super fun. It has squeeze and spray bottles too, so there's no more messy tins or drippy spouts. Just aim, squeeze, and go. I mean, there are 3 types for any task that you have. One, they have something called frizzle. That's their newest, with a higher 490-degree Fahrenheit smoke point, which is perfect for frying, crisping, or grilling. Sizzle at 410 degrees Fahrenheit, which is an everyday cooking oil for roasting, marinating, and sauteing. Then they have something called drizzle, which is a bold, a punchy finishing oil that you sprinkle on your salads, you dip your bread in, or even you top it off on your ice cream. Look, let me be clear. My daughter is the actual chef in the house, and she uses olive oil on everything from pastas to preparing steak. I mean, not only does this cook well, it smells delicious. Plus, as a healthy eater, Graza's extra virgin oils, they are loaded with those heart and brain friendly polyphenols. So it's good for you. Look, so here's what you get. You get 10% off your first order on Graza's site. But I personally suggest grabbing the trio. That's all the 3 squeezy bottles, the sizzle, the frizzle, and the drizzle, so that you're set for every style of cooking. So head right now to graza.co and use code Cohen to get 10% off of Trio, which includes, again, sizzle, frizzle, and drizzle, and get to cooking your next chef-quality meal. Again, head to Graza, graza.co, and use code Cohen, Cohen, to get 10% off the Trio. And I love saying it, sizzle, frizzle, and drizzle. So get cooking now. Nobody has ever, not George Washington, not Lincoln, nobody, not Harry S. Truman, nobody has ever done more in 60 days than my administration. And instead of patting me on my ass, instead of blowing me kisses and applauding my accomplishments, they attack me on something that turned out to be perfect. It was a perfect execution. Biden didn't do it. This one didn't do it. Nobody did it but me. And then you have Pete Hegseth and Tulsi Gabbard and Kash Patel and the rest of the motley crew come in and say Donald Trump is the greatest president in the history of this world. Thank God that we have President Trump, not President Kamala Harris or President Joe Biden, who were completely ineffective. And then they go right back to the talking point. So when I say that he is the greatest brand marketer for himself, I'm not joking. And somehow or another, there are enough stupid people in this country that are just absorbing this, and they don't just absorb it for themselves. They absorb it and they regurgitate this shit right into your face. It's almost like one of those alien movies, right? Where, they regurgitate something into your mouth, you swallow it, and then you become the alien too.
But isn't this because of the Democrats, though, Mike? Yes, I agree with everything. So. I agree with everything you just said. But if they fielded the right candidate in 2016, he's not a well-liked guy, Michael. You know that, right? Melania lives with him, Michael. She doesn't live with him. The kids have moved away from him. The people that you talk to on the inside, if they're being honest, they don't like him. He's not a well-liked guy. The people that like him are the ones that don't know him. But even then, when I ran into somebody in the airport in London, and as a voter of Trump's, yeah, I think he's an asshole. But I had a choice between him and Kamala Harris, and I said, he didn't blow up the country from 17 to 21. I'm just going to vote for him. But they don't like him. There's 10% of those voters that he got don't like. If they fielded a credible, smart, moderate candidate with some personal appeal, you don't think they could have beaten him? Talking about.
No, I truly don't. I really think that. Okay. Yeah, I really think that. Is it that
the culture war?
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Even friends of mine who, because of whether it's because of what they've done to me with the unconstitutional remand, or the fact that, he doesn't believe that a woman should have a reproductive decision-making rights. He believes that blacks are inferior. He believes that Hispanics, the brown people, are inferior. He believes that everyone is inferior. He has an issue with just about everyone and everything. They turn around, they say, yeah, but I couldn't believe this shit. What about transgender athletes in women's sports? And I said, you realize that there's like 5 of them, right? And so on. Yeah, but what about transgender bathrooms? I said, let me tell you something. All right. If a guy transitions into a woman and she wants to come into the bathroom when I'm pissing at the urinal, I don't care. I'm pretty secure with myself. I don't give a shit. This notion that transgenders are like a bunch of, raving sex lunatics that want to go into bathrooms and rape you, right? It's not true. But what do? You have members of Congress like Marjorie Toilet Green or the other ones that are screaming, I'm not going into the same bathroom. As her first of all, I'm not even sure what Marjorie Taylor Greene is. So I'm not sure what bathroom she's using. I mean, this is the thing. He takes something which is so nonsensical, all right, in terms of reality, but he makes it into an issue that these folks glom onto. And again, they just make this into a talking point. And it goes right back to his acuity as it relates to being the greatest marketing brander, especially of himself, ever.
I have to accept what you're saying.
And Ken Martin, by the way, better get his shit in gear. He better start speaking to people like you and me and the guys from Lincoln Project and Midas Touch. He better start speaking to people who actually know how to fight Trump, because in the end, he's basically going back to the old Democratic playbook, which is, oh yeah, Anthony, do me a favor. Can you send me a check for $5,000? Can you send me a check for $15? We're desperate. Did you get that email too from the Democrats? We're desperate. No, send us $15.
No, I got it, but they don't like us, by the way. Just so you know, they're if they were smart, they would form a new party, like a pro-democracy party with the word Democrat in it, right? The pro-democracy, pro-American party. They would reach out to people like you and others in the non-Trump space that are centrist or even right-leaning, and they would form a much bigger party. The Republicans were a new party in 1856. They stole people from the Democrats, and they stole people from the Whig Party, and they killed the Whig Party, and they elected Abraham Lincoln. And they could form a new party, and they could create a move on Trump where, there's a group of people, Michael, I'm with you, current Democratic narrative, he's going to beat them. But there is a group of people that if they retooled and reformed themselves and had a more moderate message, I think they could beat him.
Yeah, listen, I'm with you.
They're not going to do that, but I'm just saying that's what they should.
But I'm with you on that, because I believe that he is beatable, but you have to stay on message, and they can't have 30 messages by 50 different messengers. I mean, you have Mark Cuban going one direction. You had Liz Cheney going another. You had Jamie Raskin going one way, followed that by Eric Swalwell. Then you had this one and that one, and Anthony Scaramucci and Michael Cohen and Ben Meiselas. Then you had all these different people making comments, and we were all on different narratives, even though some may overlap. Whereas the one thing that Trump and this Republican Party are doing very well, every day, you remember this, they put out talking points. And it was those talking points that you must stay on. I must say that Anthony Scaramucci is the smartest guy ever to walk into any room. That Anthony Scaramucci is actually Superman,
tall,
right? Disguised.
I'm tall. I'm 6'3".
7'2", and that you sent it for the New York Knicks, and just keep saying it over and over again until the lie becomes the truth, which of course, as we all know, was a Stalin-esque approach. But you brought up something that I actually want to touch on. I can't let it go. It's these executive orders. You and I actually had spoken offline a while back before even all the nonsense, the fire hose of stupidity became apparent, that they were going to put out like 200 executive orders so hard and so fast that there's no way that the courts or anybody could keep up with it. Well, a new one just came out as well that they're putting forth, where the administration is now focusing on election integrity, all right, including this new EO overhauling U.S. elections. I want to ask you, how does this security breach and other stuff affect the credibility of this initiative?
Well, it's so complicated. It's so complicated because the African American community was given the right to vote after the Civil War. They didn't vote because people got their addresses, people got their IDs, they went to their houses, they set their children on fire, and they lynched the parents. And that was a warning to other African Americans in the area: don't vote. Mm-hmm. So the voter ID thing, historically over 100 years, has been tinged with this problem. Now, Trump and Musk and these other guys, on a superficial level, show me your ID, you get the right to vote, only U.S. citizens should be able to vote, all that stuff makes sense to the average American. But what I am saying is what is really going on in the system still, which is why, if you're a progressive, if you're why you want to promote the ability for African Americans to have their right to vote in certain areas of the country, you would leave out the voter ID. And by the way, my local electioneers out here on Long Island know the people. They know the people who are here. They know the citizens. They don't need the ID. Now, there's if someone heard me and the conservatives, be great pushback, and they want the ID because they know it will limit non-white voters from showing up at the ballot box, and that's the reason that they want it. So to me, it's almost a disavowal of the Civil Rights Voting Act, what Trump is doing. And so I would, if I was at the NAACP or I was at American Civil Liberties Union, I would challenge that executive order because you know the rules. An executive order can hold if it's not against the Constitution. And if it's outside the ambit of the Constitution, it can be challenged and it can be revoked. And that one, I think somebody's got to go after. Now, maybe you say, look, the courts are rigged and it's a right-leaning court, and they'll say that it's, you got to have the ID. I don't know, though, because there's a lot of those justices are originalists. A lot of those justices, I don't know if they really want to break the Constitution for Donald Trump. I think that's the question of our time, Michael. Is there a group of judges that want to break the Constitution, have their tongues come out of their mouths like twisted pretzels, and lie for Donald Trump in court decisions? They really.
Well, I'll tell you one thing.
The woman in Florida did that.
Right. Mm-hmm. Eileen Cannon.
Yeah.
But I will say that Amy Coney Barrett is not playing that game, and he's pissed at her too, and he's made it crystal clear that he didn't like the fact that she ruled against him, which changed it. But he still had four of the 9 Supreme Court justices siding with him on something that any 5-year-old knows is wrong. And it didn't make a difference. They voted with him anyway because they are not constitutionalists. They are not acting like Supreme Court. They're acting like loyalists. And that to me is a big problem.
But, you and I know how Washington works. Sometimes the thing is going to win. Person's going to win, so you vote again. These guys horse trade with each other. They're like, okay, look, for my constituents, I got to vote no. You've got 3 votes yes, so I'm going to vote no to protect me and my constituents, even though I want the yeses to win. You see what I mean?
Yes, but not with the Supreme Court, Anthony, because they have that lifetime appointment, as do the federal court judges. So they're not supposed to be horse trading anything.
But they don't want the political pressure that now is being exhorted on them by Donald Trump. You're not talking about a normal president. Obama accepted what came out of the court. Bush accepted. Al Gore accepted what came out of the court. This is not a guy that does that. Yep. This is a norm breaker, you know.
You're right. So since we're talking about the judiciary, let me ask you this, because the GOP has started a campaign of attacks on the judiciary, including a suggestion to eliminate certain federal courts. And yet, the party's stance on checks and balances within the government, these GOP loyalists, they're like, well, if Trump thinks that that's the right thing to do, you know what, maybe he's right. These judges are no good. And by the way, I'm the first one to turn around and to say some of these federal court judges are motherfuckers and they don't care. It's like they're lazy. They bought their way into that federal judgeship. But I still don't want to see checks and balances destroyed, as we talked about before, with the metaphorical rewriting of the Constitution by Trump, where all power gets conferred to him and his cronies. No way.
I think you're right. I miss you, Michael. This is a good conversation. I miss these conversations.
Well, it is, but I'm still trying to get an answer from you. You know, how do you think that this is going to influence the party's stance?
I'm in the camp. The party's over. I'm in the camp that this is a cult now, and this is the MAGA cult, and they're not. But whatever Trump wants, they're going to give him. And so as long as in the next 2 years, when he wakes up look at what he did to these guys. He said, no TikTok. And he got all these guys to vote against TikTok. Then the TikTok people gave him a little bit of money. And they said, look, we're going to switch the algorithm and try to help you with the young vote. I'm for TikTok. And now people go, you told us not to vote for it. Well, now what do we do? Oh, no, we're voting for it. Okay, we're for TikTok. So whatever is in Mr. Cannonball's head, as he blasts into these people, okay, Mr. Cultural Napoleon, is what's going to happen. And it depends. You know, if he wakes up hangry, he didn't have the well-done steak with the ketchup, he's going to say one thing. And if he gets a Diet Coke at the right time, he's going to say another thing.
Andy, do you remember going back? Wrong? You're right. No, you're not. And that's the saddest part. You remember going back in 2016 when you first started getting heavy into crypto. And I said to you, he hates the concept. He thinks only drug dealers and arms dealers are using crypto. That
he was lighting up. And not only did you say that, he was lighting people up on the presidential Twitter feed about it.
Yeah. I mean, and now all of a sudden, I know more about crypto than just about anybody.
No, right? Satoshi. I think. Do you think Trump's Satoshi? You could be Satoshi Nakamoto, Trump. At this point.
I don't know. Listen, you never know. It's very, very possible.
All right. For all the Bitcoiners out there, I was kidding on Michael's podcast, okay?
Exactly. Meanwhile, I want to jump back into one of the attacks on the judge. I'm talking about Judge Boasberg. He's obviously been a massive target of GOP criticism. How do you think that this, for example, the signal chat controversy, how do you think that it impacts the judiciary's role in overseeing executive actions?
So it's such a great question, and I think they need backup. I think if John Thune called those judges and said, listen, I just want you to know I don't like the liquidation of the judicial branch or the legislative branch. And if you're pushing back on this nonsense, you're going to get my help. The Congress is going to rally. I will find 6 to 10 senators, and I will caucus with the Democrats to blow back this nonsense that you're willing to rule against. If they leave him out there to dry, I'm going to quote J.D. Vance. What army do these judges have, Michael? And how are they going to enforce these? So if the administration turns to them and says, oh, really? We don't care. We're sending the plane to El Salvador or Venezuela. We don't care. What is the recourse? Are they going to have a U.S. Marshal ring the doorbell at the North Portico and say, hey, we're here to arrest the president. We have a contempt order from a judge. Is that going to happen? We both know that that's not going to happen. But what could happen is the Senate teams up with the Judiciary, and then they start passing laws, and they start pushing the president around. And I think he's afraid of that. I'm going to tell you why. Because he even sent Homan out on Sunday to bend on some of the things that the judges were saying. And he said, okay, we're going to abide by certain court rulings and so on and so forth, because he's trying to deflect and boil the frog, because he's afraid that could happen right at this moment still.
Right, which is why, again, he wants to destroy the legislative and the judiciary branches. You know, Anthony, right. As the hour comes to an end, I have one final question for you. I can't believe I love hanging with you. It's been way too long.
Yeah, no, it's fucking funny actually. That's the problem. Yeah,
I mean, go ahead. Based
Especially
on
when you start talking, like, I might get like sweat. I start sweating in my hands and shit.
You are a little red. You're a little flustered there, pal.
I feel like I'm going to get fired again. Don't fire me again, Mr. President. All right, but go ahead.
Based on your experience,
yeah,
what advice would you offer to the current administration officials to navigate the complexities of maintaining, for example, national security while ensuring public trust? Because all you need to do is take a look at Catherine Levitt, right, who is sitting in a position that you held for a short period of time.
11 days.
And you have to be furious when you watch and you see the lies and the promotion of the talking points over and over and over again, legitimately saying nothing, but saying a lot. What's the advice you would give these people?
Well, I mean, the advice I would give these people, they wouldn't take, frankly, but to me, Marco Rubio is an example. You should be resigning by now. You've had 65 days of this nonsense. They're tailing you with a MAGA stenographer. You don't believe any of the stuff he's saying about Ukraine or Russia. You're trying to pretend that you do, but you really don't. And I think you got to, at some point, have some personal integrity and say, this does not work for me. I'm sorry. I can't take it anymore. And for me, he fired me, no problem, a big boy. I tried to stay loyal for 2 years, Michael.
Yep.
I said, all right, this is crazy. Can't do this anymore. This is crazy. Bad for my family, bad for my health. I'm not. And, he did it to you. We talked about this when I visited you, frankly. He kept moving the goalposts. Michael, you're loyal? Okay, great. Do this. Oh, Michael, you're loyal? Okay, great. Do this. Do this. Do this. And he pushed you into the Atlantic Ocean. Past Montauk Point into the Atlantic Ocean. And so I would just say to these people, they're not going to take my advice. Close the door in your quiet moment. Ask yourself if what you're doing is good for your soul and good for your country. And if it isn't, you got to resign. And you got to say, hey, I'm sorry, this doesn't work for me. And that would slow it down. But he's at the bottom of the barrel now, where he has a group of people that are not willing to do that. But that would be my advice, sir.
Yeah, well, it's good advice. Some of them should take it, even though, sadly, we know that they won't. Superman Scaramucci, I thank you for joining me.
Good to be
doing
on
that. Plug your podcast, because your podcast is killing it, and it's entertaining and it's informative.
Well, it's you and the Midas Touch guys are also killing it. Congratulations and mazel tov to all of you. But I do a Caddy K, somebody a British journalist. We do it with a British company called Goalhanger. It's called The Rest is Politics US, available anywhere where you get your podcasts. And somebody told me Caddy K and Anthony Scaramucci is like John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John doing a podcast together in character, Michael.
By the way, loving it. That's a great analogy. Mooch,
except she's wearing the Long Island leather jacket at this point. I just want to make sure you know.
Right, and you're not wearing the Firebirds.
Right, exactly. Love you too, man.
Thank you, brother. Great to see you.